It was just last year when we celebrated Israel's 72nd Independence Day at the start of the coronavirus pandemic. None of us thought then that we would still be deep in the pandemic at our 73rd Independence Day with no end in sight. The pandemic has created a situation not seen for many years. From globalization and a world without borders to the exact opposite. Countries have closed their gates and each had to cope on its own. Each country had to test the limits of their abilities, the stamina of the social fabric, the capacity of the health services, their economic strength, and more, as did Israel. Luckily, or sometimes sadly, Israel has much experience in emergency situations. I do not know of any other case where in 7 decades a country has had as many emergencies as Israel. The experience we have gained has contributed greatly to our success while coping with the pandemic. We are already seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. In a massive effort, Israel has successfully vaccinated most of its citizens, and after many long months, Israel is returning to normal gradually. Cultural and sporting events are back on the menu, and so are restaurants, hotels, beaches, and nature reserves. I hope this process will continue, making Israel the very first country to get back into routine. I also hope that soon many other countries, including South Africa, will join us. While each country looked inwards to battle the pandemic, it was still clear that the solution to the largest global challenge in recent decades would only come from a joint global effort. The need to find a vaccine, to disperse it to the nations of the world, to find a cure, and other challenges required global cooperation. In this, Israel has stood out amongst the nations. We are the first country that has taken upon itself to test the effects of the vaccine, the Pfizer one. Not a lab test, but millions of Israeli citizens that are testing the effectiveness with their own bodies, with side effects, its effects on infecting other ones, inoculated and more. We did not keep the information from this campaign to ourselves. We shared it with the leaders and health services around the world. Meanwhile, Israel has also been developing its own vaccine, which we hope will be ready in a few months and will be able to share it with the countries that need it. Also, recently, an amazing discovery has been made in one of our Israeli hospitals. There has been a very successful trial for a cure for corona. The experiment has shown a 97% immediate recovery rate and release from hospital for the critically ill patients that took part in the trial. Imagine having medicine that could stop the death around the world until we can vaccinate citizens in all countries. Somehow, while all this is going on, with Israel being marked as a leader in the fight against corona, there are still those who find the time and energy to voice messages of hate against Israel and even of anti-Semitism. For them, there is no pandemic more important than the pandemic of hate towards Israel. As always, Israel's response is with actions, not words. Not only is our success with the pandemic an answer to this hatred, so is the dramatic process with the peace process. In the last year, through the Abraham Accord, Israel has signed 4 peace agreements with Arabic countries, each agreement more moving than the last. The result of the agreements with the UAE and Bahrain amazed us all. In just a few weeks, air transport agreements were signed and direct flights were installed, as were visa-free agreements allowing tourism to flow even during Corona. High-tech and innovation companies have already signed exciting breakthrough agreements. Diplomatic representation opened, and my dear colleagues in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs hoisted the blue and white flag in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Manama. These dramatic developments and changes did not stop in the Middle East. There is no one as happy as I, as a representative of Israel in Africa, to see the circle of peace widening in this continent. Peace agreements have been signed with Sudan and Morocco, which has received a new Israeli ambassador. Diplomatic relations have been established with Chad. Friendship has deepened with Rwanda, Tanzania, Malawi, that will be moving its embassy to Jerusalem, just to name a few. I also have the privilege to enjoy this historic progression. I will forever remember my first visit to the UAE embassy and the moving reception I received. Same happened with my Moroccan counterpart here. This is a major change in the Middle Eastern reality, and we can promise that we will not stop there. We will stretch our hands out for peace to all countries of the world, and I am sure that more countries from the Middle East and Africa will join the peace process with Israel. This will be our definitive answer to the BDS organization and other representatives of hate toward Israel and Jews. Imagine their dismay, sitting and watching helplessly while Israel successfully battles Corona, goes back to its normal routine, gives from its knowledge to the world, grows its economy, and advances peace agreements with our neighbors. Israel is not alone, and our success is thanks to our strong partners around the world. Israel is grateful to the Jewish communities in the diaspora for standing with us. The Jewish community in South Africa is a glowing example of this, and I am taken aback as I rediscover our strong bonds time and time again. From the schools and the wonderful students learning about Zionism and their connection to Israel, through the students of yeshivas, seminaries, and universities coming to Israel and in many cases stay, to the many community institutions, social welfare, security, the Board of Jewish Deputies, and the Zionist Federation. All of these are full partners of the embassy here and are full partners to the success of Israel. This is the exact time and place to thank this wonderful Jewish community in South Africa for your friendship and extraordinary connection to the State of Israel. I also thank the Christian Friends of Israel and those of other religions for your work around the clock to progress the relations between our nations and our countries, all in challenging circumstances. My words of thanks are representing the 9 million citizens of Israel who are thanking you. Together, we will continue marching Israel to a better future. Happy Independence Day to you, Israel.